This part actually is pretty robust at this point. The converter of the AST to LLVM. I've actually got test cycles that will do all that. So you can take input in XML, convert it to the AST, convert it down to LLVM, execute it, and regenerate the XML back out the other end. And then verify input and output. That's all been working for a while. But also expect there to be generators for HTML so that you get automated documentation. A documentation node is part of the AST, so comments would go into a documentation node, and then it can also take the structure of the whole program and just create, this is basically Doxygen, okay, for any language that uses the AST, and JIT generation as well. HLVM, reference implementation of the runtime. Again, there will be a specification for the runtime. The reference implementation is based on APR, which is the Apache Portable Runtime. It's the component of the Apache web compiler that allows it to run on a whole bunch of platforms. And handles things like memory management, and network interface, and disk interface, and all this operating system type stuff, threading. And so we're just going to base our reference implementation on that. A really simplified architecture. So here are the ways to get input into the specification of the language through the processor, maybe some adapters for Antler and Jaclex. That results in a source to ASC translator, which translates the outside syntax tree, which is picked up by the generator to generate a head code, which gives you the runtime. There's no magic here. Now, there's probably a lot more details than this, but that gives you the basic idea. Status, release 0.2. I told you it was early and there's not much there yet. I have no languages supported other than this fake XML one that I created. AST supports LVM constructs only, so at this point, there's functions, there's global variables, there's basic looping constructs, if-then statements. There's no objects, there's no threading, there's no synchronization, there's none of the higher order stuff. Generator works, it doesn't need to be updated for 2.0, but we'll do that probably next week or two. And it passes the significant test suite, and there's much more to be done. Questions?
So one of the things that I think is most difficult about a front end is generating useful error messages.
Yeah.
Is that something you already have worked into the framework, or is it something you plan to add?
It's something I know that I want to do well. The kind of error message you get out of the app-based parsers, don't want to go there. And I've been looking at Antler as to whether that's just good enough. I mean, you basically get a recursive descent parser out of Antler. And you can generally recursive descent allows you the opportunity to produce pretty good error messages. At least you can produce context as you go up the function levels. But yeah, it's a goal to have good error messages.
So one suggestion I have is there's a paper coming up in PLDI this year, and it's very hard to get papers published on parsing these days.
I tried that a few years ago. Rejected.
Yeah. And the reason why it got published, I think it's a really clever idea. And what they do is they basically take the error checking and generation of error messages and the whole process and separate it out from the part that actually does the parsing. So if you improve error messages or make changes to add new error messages and things like that, you don't have to change the structure of the parser itself. The error message becomes a separate search process that lives on top of the parser. And so you're taking the whole error message generation and analysis out of what they call the trusted code. You can fix that without breaking the parser.
Send me a link to that.
I sent you emails.
Well, I don't have a question. I have a comment. My 2 cents are I've used Antler many years ago. No Terrence Parr. I've seen it grow over the years. I've used Jack. I've used Bison. And I think all of those tools get in the way of a lot of the goals you have. Okay? And I think they're wonderful for consing up a quick language or prototyping. They're wonderful. But as per this discussion, error messages is one area they don't do a great job on. So that's one. Another area is performance. They often stand in the way of your performance objectives, at least I've seen in the past. And so, you know, at least for the work we're doing, that I'll be talking about later, we chose not to use any of those tools. Now, we're just looking at C-based front end, so it's a much simpler problem domain. But my experience is recursive descent for C-based languages works great and can produce great results. And most commercial compilers, I think, agree with that today. So.
Yeah, so the problem, I mean, one of the things that I'm trying to get to, you know, for other purposes, for this XPS project that I'm working on, is to get to the point where you can create programming languages quickly. And if you have to write a recursive descent, and especially if it's a complicated language, you know, I can't imagine writing a recursive
Absolutely.
descent.
So that's why I think you have too many goals. I think if your goal is to prototype languages quickly, then I think you just counter to some of your other goals that are pretty lofty. Like you said, performance, right? Performance was a...
The main two are performance and getting new languages up and running fast. Those are really the two.
Well, so is it performance of the compiler or performance of the generated code?
Both. You have the goal for LLVM, why not?
One point, most languages don't have well-defined semantics to the point that you can write a specification. Right? For a comment that really the only two languages that have a fully defined semantics are Scheme and ML. So the goal of having a language that a language construction language is too much, providing tools and having each language provide its own classes and then map its own features to a high-level structure. So it's like a big and very useful project and so on.
Yeah, and that's probably how it's going to evolve. I mean, I'm giving you sort of the big picture here. I don't have answers on how to write HLVM, and I'll look at papers and keep researching it. But the way it's going to evolve is a set of libraries that make it easier to write, you know, a recursive descent.
Yeah, if you start bottom up, then you can stop when it seems.
That's exactly what I'm building. When I started the LLVM level, wrote the generators, the AST, and I'm trying to work my way up. And I need to get breadth as well. So I need to, you know, I'd be happy if what we ended up with was just an AST that had a full runtime that was portable across a bunch of machines. That alone would be good enough.
But aren't the ASTs inherently, they depend on the language that you're parsing, right?
Well, they do.
So,
There's a lot of commonality.
I understand that, but you haven't done any language yet, have you?
No, just the next.
So, I mean, the ASTs are still in a very early stage then, right?
The name ASTs are misnamed for what you're doing. You should
Perhaps.
Yeah, because the ASTs usually means something that directly maps to the source
Exact
code.
syntax.
That's right. Yeah, I think it's a bad match.
Yeah, it's much more like a high-level IR.
Yeah.
The point that I wanted to make about that, I mean, there's one point I can say about that, which is because of the bidirectionality thing, I want to be able to get back to the source language from the AST. It's not going to happen without the help of...
That's not always possible, right? Or it might cause a lot of trouble. Like you get from C to your AST, then you want to get back to Java. What do you do with a pointer cast?
It's technically always possible.
Yeah, but...
And we should stop there and go
Yeah.
Right, so there are those language incompatibility things, and
Well,
either...
except that you've got things like Swig, which handle this all the time. You know, with director calls, with writing back down calls from Java to C++. There's definitely a basis of work that you can draft on. It's going to be painful, but it's there.
So he'll be around all afternoon.
It's done.